Connor gripped the steering wheel tightly as he navigated his way through the winding, desolate roads of the countryside. The darkness outside seemed to swallow everything in its path, the only source of light coming from his car's headlights. He had always enjoyed night drives. There was something strangely calming about the solitude and the hum of the engine. As he drove deeper into the night, Connor's mind wandered. He had left the city behind hours ago, seeking refuge from the chaos of his everyday life. But tonight, the tranquility he sought seemed elusive. Instead, a sense of unease settled over him, creeping into his thoughts like tendrils of fog. Connor glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was well past midnight, and yet he had no destination in mind. He had set out with the intention of losing himself in the darkness, but now he found himself questioning the wisdom of his decision. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt. Heart pounding, he peered into the darkness, trying to make out what had caused the disturbance. But there was nothing, just the empty road stretching out before him. Shaking his head, Connor dismissed it as a trick of the mind. He had been driving for hours, and exhaustion was starting to play tricks on him. He pressed down on the accelerator, eager to put some distance between himself and whatever shadows lurked in the night. But as he drove on, a nagging feeling of unease settled in the pit of his stomach. It was as if he could feel eyes watching him from the darkness, unseen but ever present. Connor tried to shake off the sensation, telling himself it was just his imagination running wild. However, as he rounded a bend in the road, he was met with a sight that sent chills down his spine. Standing in the middle of the road was a figure, a silhouette against the inky blackness. Connor's blood ran cold as he realized that whoever or whatever was blocking his path was not human. Connor's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he stared at the figure in disbelief. It stood motionless, bathed in the glow of his headlights, its features obscured by the darkness. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to remain calm. Perhaps it was just a trick of the light, a stray branch or a shadow cast by the trees. But as he edged closer, the figure remained stubbornly in place, refusing to yield to his approach. Connor's heart hammered in his chest as he contemplated his options. Should he try to drive around it, or was it safer to turn back and find another route? Before he could make a decision, the figure moved. With a sudden fluid motion, it stepped forward into the pool of light cast by the headlights. Connor's breath caught in his throat as he caught sight of its face, or rather, the lack thereof. Where a face should have been, there was only darkness, an empty void that seemed to devour the light around it. Terror seized hold of Connor as he realized that he was face to face with something not of this world. Frantically, he reached for the gear shift, intending to reverse and flee from the horror before him. But as his hand closed around the knob, the figure spoke, a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss. "Do not be afraid, Connor," it said, its words reverberating through the still night air. "I mean you no harm." Connor's mind reeled. How did this thing know his name? And what did it want from him? He considered ignoring its words and making a break for it. But something in the figure's demeanor gave him pause. Despite its terrifying appearance, there was an otherworldly calmness about it, a sense of ancient wisdom that seemed to emanate from its very being. "Who are you?" Connor managed to choke out, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am but a wanderer, like yourself," the figure replied, its voice soft yet commanding. "I have traveled far and wide, seeking those who are lost and guiding them on their journey." Connor's mind raced. Was this creature some kind of guardian angel, sent to watch over him in his darkest hour? Or was it something more sinister, a harbinger of doom, leading him further into the abyss? Before he could decide, the figure spoke again, its words sending shivers down Connor's spine. "There is a darkness coming, Connor," it said, its voice grave. "A darkness that threatens to consume everything in its path. But fear not, for you possess the power to stop it." Connor's heart pounded in his chest. What could this creature possibly mean? And how was he supposed to stop whatever malevolent force was lurking in the shadows? But before he could voice his questions, the figure began to fade, its form dissolving into the darkness like smoke on the wind. "Remember, Connor," it whispered, its voice fading into the night. "The fate of the world rests in your hands." Connor sat in stunned silence, trying to process the encounter he had just experienced. The words of the mysterious figure echoed in his mind, filling him with a sense of dread and urgency. What darkness was it talking about? And how could he possibly have the power to stop it? His thoughts whirled as he stared out into the darkness, searching for answers that seemed just out of reach. But as the minutes stretched into hours, a sense of clarity began to dawn within him. Perhaps the answers he sought were not to be found in the tangible world, but in the depths of his own soul. With newfound determination, Connor started the car and pressed down on the accelerator, his destination clear in his mind. He may not have all the answers yet, but he knew that he had to confront the darkness head-on, whatever the cost. As the miles flew by, Connor felt a sense of purpose burning within him, a fire that fueled his resolve and pushed him ever forward. He didn't know what awaited him at the end of the road, but he knew that he couldn't turn back now. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to break on the horizon, Connor reached his destination, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the heart of the forest. It was here, he realized, that the final confrontation would take place. With a steadying breath, Connor stepped out of the car and made his way towards the cabin, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the morning. He knew that he was walking into the unknown, but he also knew that he was not alone. As he reached the door, Connor hesitated for only a moment before pushing it open and stepping inside. The air was heavy with anticipation, the room bathed in an eerie half-light. And there, standing in the center of the room, was the source of the darkness, a being of pure malevolence, its eyes burning with hatred and malice. But Connor was not afraid. With every fiber of his being, he knew that he possessed the power to overcome the darkness, to banish it from this world once and for all. With a cry of defiance, he faced the creature head-on, his courage unshakable. And as their battle raged on, the fate of the world hung in the balance. In the end, it was Connor's unwavering determination and inner strength that prevailed, casting the darkness back into the abyss from whence it came. As he stood victorious amidst the wreckage, Connor knew that his journey was far from over. But with the memory of the night drive etched into his mind, he also knew that whatever trials lay ahead, he would face them with courage and resolve. For he was Connor, the guardian of light in a world consumed by darkness, and nothing would ever extinguish the flame that burned within him.